was always good at lying. Some kids are good at sports, others are good at math. But for me, lying was my talent. Even as a child, I could manipulate anyone. I figured out how to cry on command, how to twist stories to get what I wanted, how to charm people into believing I was something I wasn't. At first, it was just little things. Lying to my parents about finishing my homework, tricking my teachers into giving me extra time on assignments. But as I got older, I realized something. The world isn't fair. It isn't kind. It rewards the people who know how to bend the rules. By the time I turned 18, I had already mastered the art of deception. I knew how to read people, how to figure out their weaknesses, how to use their emotions against them. Most people wear their fears on their faces. The fear of being alone, the fear of missing out, the fear of losing their chance at something great. I learned to prey on that fear. By 22, I had started my first real con. I created fake investment schemes, promising people insane returns on their money. I built fake companies, fake bank accounts, even fake testimonials from successful investors who were just actors I had paid to play the part. People handed over their life savings, convinced they were going to be rich. And me? I took everything. I lived in penthouses. I drove luxury cars. I partied in the most expensive clubs. I was only 27, but I had millions in stolen cash, and I felt unstoppable. I had no guilt, no regret, no second thoughts. To me, people were just stepping stones, things to be used, taken advantage of, and discarded when they were no longer useful. But then, one night, I died, and everything changed. It was a Friday night, and I was on top of the world. I had just closed a deal, one of my biggest cons yet. A wealthy businessman had wired me $500,000, thinking he was investing in a startup that didn't even exist. The money had just hit my offshore account, and I was celebrating. Drinks, a fast car, loud music. I barely noticed the rain that had started to fall as I sped down the highway. I didn't see the truck. I didn't see the headlights. I only felt impact. A sudden, brutal force, metal twisting, glass shattering, my body being thrown like a rag doll. Then, silence. Darkness. For a moment, I thought that was it, that my life had just stopped. But then, I opened my eyes, and I was somewhere else. I wasn't in my car anymore. I wasn't even on the road. I was standing, fully aware, fully conscious, in a place that wasn't Earth. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Maybe I was in a coma, hallucinating from the crash. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized the truth. This was real. The space around me was vast, a deep, endless void. It wasn't black, not like nighttime, but something deeper, something empty. I looked down. I could still see my body. I was wearing the same clothes from that night. My expensive watch still on my wrist, my designer shoes still perfectly polished. But something was wrong. The air felt heavy, pressing down on me like I was sinking. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Then, I heard the voices. At first, they were whispers, faint, distant. But as I stood there, the whispers became louder, and I realized they were calling my name. Nathan. I turned in every direction, trying to find where they were coming from. Nathan, look at us. And then, I saw them. Figures emerged from the darkness, stepping forward. I could barely breathe as I realized who they were. They were the people I had scammed. There was an old woman whose savings I had drained, leaving her homeless. A young man who had trusted me with everything, only to lose it all. A father who had invested in my fake company, thinking he was securing his family's future. And now, they stood before me. But the worst part? They weren't angry. They were broken. "You ruined me," one of them whispered. "I lost everything," another said. "You destroyed my life, Nathan." I stumbled backward, shaking my head. No, no, this isn't real. This can't be happening. But I felt it. I felt their pain, their desperation, their suffering. I had never cared before, but now it was all crashing down on me. I tried to run, but no matter where I turned, they were there. More of them. More victims. More people I had ruined. And for the first time in my life, I felt true fear. Then, in the middle of the chaos, something changed. A light, brighter than anything I had ever seen, pierced through the void. It wasn't just light, it was power, truth, and something deeper. Something I had spent my whole life avoiding. Holiness. The voices around me stopped. The figures disappeared. And then, he stepped forward. I didn't need anyone to tell me who he was. I knew. Jesus. I fell to my knees, shaking. I couldn't even speak. His presence was overwhelming, not in anger, not in hatred, but in something far worse. Sorrow. He wasn't mad at me. He was grieving for me. Do you understand what you have done, Nathan? His voice was calm, yet unshakable. I tried to speak, to explain, to justify, but the words wouldn't come, because in that moment, I saw it. The truth. I had spent my life taking from others. Now, I had nothing left. I looked up at him, my whole body trembling. Is it too late? I whispered. Jesus looked at me with deep sorrow. That is up to you. Then, everything changed. I knelt before him, my body shaking as if I were about to shatter into pieces. This wasn't like anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't fear of getting caught, the nervousness of being exposed, or even the anxiety of losing everything. No, this was something much deeper. It was the weight of truth itself. For the first time in my life, there was no scheme, no manipulation, no way to twist the facts to my advantage. I had spent years mastering the art of deception, lying even to myself. But now, before Jesus, I realized something terrifying. Here, in this place, lies had no power. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. His presence held me, not by force, but by something stronger, something I couldn't fight. He wasn't just looking at me, he was looking through me. Every secret, every crime, every con, every excuse I had ever made was exposed in that single moment. I wanted to speak, to justify myself, but the words stuck in my throat. What could I possibly say? That I hadn't meant to ruin lives? That it wasn't my fault people trusted me? That they were foolish for believing my lies? I had told myself those things before. I had built my entire life on those justifications. But now, they meant nothing. The silence between us stretched endlessly, filling the space like a living thing. I wanted him to speak, to end it, but he didn't. He just watched me. And then, when I thought I could take no more, the visions began. I felt my body being lifted, not by hands, not by force, but by something unseen. The darkness around us parted, and suddenly, I was standing in a world I recognized, but had never cared to see. It was Earth. I was in a rundown apartment, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap alcohol. The furniture was sparse, and in the center of the room sat a man hunched over a stack of unpaid bills, his head buried in his hands. I knew him. He was one of my victims, a father who had trusted me with his life savings, convinced by my fake promises of wealth. I had taken everything from him, left him with nothing. And now, here he was, broken, ruined. I watched as he reached into a drawer and pulled out a bottle of pills. I tried to scream, Stop! I didn't mean for this. But he couldn't hear me. He swallowed the pills, one by one, his breathing ragged. Within minutes, he collapsed. His body twitched, then went still. I felt it. I felt the moment his life slipped away, the crushing finality of it. And I knew this was my doing. Before I could even process what I had seen, I was pulled away, transported to another place, a small house, barely held together, the sound of crying echoing through the thin walls. Inside, a woman sat on the floor, rocking back and forth, clutching a photo of her husband. She was sobbing, her body shaking. Their children sat beside her, too young to understand why their father wasn't coming home. And I knew why. I had stolen their future, just like I had stolen so many others. The pain I had caused wasn't just money lost. It wasn't just some bad investments. It was real lives destroyed. And now, I was being forced to watch every single one. The visions kept coming, one after another, each worse than the last. I saw the homeless man who once had a stable life until I scammed him. I saw the woman who lost everything and turned to things she swore she never would, just to survive. I saw children forced to live in shelters because I had drained their families of every last cent. I wanted to look away, to shut it out, but I couldn't. This was my judgment, and I deserved it. Tears streamed down my face, my chest heaving with sobs. I turned to Jesus, desperate, my voice raw. I didn't mean for this. I swear, I didn't mean for this. His eyes remained steady, filled with both sorrow and something I couldn't understand. But you never cared to see, did you? He asked, his voice calm yet piercing. I trembled. I hadn't. I had never once thought about what happened to the people I scammed after I took what I wanted. As long as the money hit my account, their suffering didn't exist to me. And yet, it had been so real. I fell to the ground, my hands clawing at my face, my mind spinning. What happens now? I asked, barely able to form the words. Jesus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he extended his hand. You must see what happens next, he said. I hesitated, fear gripping my soul. I wasn't sure I could handle more, but I had no choice. I reached out, and the moment I touched his hand, everything changed. A violent force yanked me downward. I screamed, but the sound was lost in the whirlwind of heat and darkness that swallowed me whole. I tumbled through endless shadows, my body weightless, yet overwhelmed by a terrible pulling sensation, as if something was dragging me down into the depths of the earth. Then, I hit the ground. I gasped for breath, but the air was thick and heavy, like smoke filling my lungs. The heat was unbearable, and all around me, I heard wailing. Not just cries, screams. I turned, and for the first time, I saw them. People, countless people, trapped in suffering beyond words. Some clutched their faces, their eyes filled with torment. Others wandered, whispering to themselves, their voices hollow, as if their minds had long since shattered. And I knew, without being told, where I was. Hell. Terror gripped me. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. I tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The ground beneath me was cracked and scorched, the sky above me filled with shadows that moved like living things. I turned in every direction, desperate, panic rising in my throat. Jesus, please don't leave me here. And then, light. A single sliver, distant but unmistakable. A voice called my name. Nathan. It was Jesus. Hope surged through me. I turned toward the light, reaching for it, tears streaming down my face. Please, I sobbed, give me another chance. His voice was steady, filled with something I could finally recognize. Love. You must make a choice, he said. If you go back, you must change. You must live differently. You must tell others the truth. I nodded frantically. I will. I swear, I will. The light grew. The heat faded. The screams dimmed. And then I woke up. A jolt of electricity surged through my body as I gasped for air, my chest heaving violently. I could hear the beeping of machines, the frantic voices of doctors shouting, and the cold sensation of metal pressing against my skin. I was back. The hospital room was bright, too bright, as if the light from my experience hadn't fully faded. My body ached, but it was nothing compared to the weight in my soul. The visions were still there, the faces of the people I had ruined, the voices of those I had scammed, the glimpse of hell itself. I had begged for another chance, and now I had it. But what did I do now? What did it even mean to change? A nurse ran into the room, her face frozen in shock. "He's awake," she shouted, calling for the doctors. I barely registered the commotion. My mind was spinning. My heart felt different, as if something had been torn out of me and replaced with something new. I saw the hospital's fluorescent lights, the machines hooked up to my body, the IV in my arm, and yet, I still felt like I wasn't fully here. The echo of what I had seen lingered. The smell of that suffocating place clung to me. The screams of souls trapped in torment still rang in my ears. The look of Jesus' sorrowful eyes still haunted me. I had made a promise, and now I had to keep it. The doctors surrounded me, checking my vitals, talking about how they had lost me for over 7 minutes. 7 minutes dead. 7 minutes in eternity. I barely heard them. My hands trembled as I gripped the hospital blanket. I wasn't sure if it was fear, shock, or the weight of everything I had just witnessed. Then, my eyes landed on a chair across the room, and my heart stopped. Sitting there was Ryan. He had been my closest friend, and my biggest victim. Ryan was one of the first people I had conned. He had trusted me with everything, his life savings, his future, his hope, and I had stolen it all. Now, he sat there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. It wasn't anger. It wasn't relief. It was something else. Something like waiting. The room emptied, but Ryan didn't move. He just sat there, his arms crossed, staring at me. I swallowed hard. How could I face him? How could I explain what had happened? I had spent my entire life running, lying, twisting the truth, but now I had no choice. I had to tell him. My throat felt dry as I forced out the words. "Ryan, I'm sorry." His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw the pain I had caused. "You're sorry?" His voice was quiet, but it carried years of hurt. "You ruined me, Nathan. Do you even understand that? I lost everything because of you." The shame crashed over me like a tidal wave. I know. And you what?" His voice was bitter now. "You had a change of heart? You found God? You died and came back and now you're a new man?" He scoffed. "Do you have any idea how many times I've imagined you lying in a ditch somewhere? How many times I wished you would get what you deserved?" His words hit me like a hammer. I deserved all of it. I had ruined him. Not just financially, but emotionally. I had taken his trust, his belief in people, his hope. I had been a disease in his life, and now I was here, begging for forgiveness, and he had no reason to give it. Tears burned in my eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Ryan. I need to tell you what happened." I expected him to laugh in my face, but he didn't. He just watched me, so I told him everything. I told him about the accident, about waking up in the darkness, about seeing the people I had hurt, about Jesus, about hell. I told him how I had felt their pain, how I had watched the consequences of my actions unfold in ways I had never imagined. I told him about falling into hell, about the screams, about the hopelessness that clung to me like chains. And finally, I told him about the moment Jesus saved me. When I finished, the room fell into silence. I had no idea what Ryan was thinking. His expression was unreadable, his body still. Then, after what felt like forever, he exhaled. "This is insane," he muttered. I nodded. "I know." He rubbed his face, shaking his head. "And what? Now you're just a different person? You expect me to believe that you died, met Jesus, and now you want to fix everything?" I swallowed hard. "I don't expect you to believe anything, but I have to try." His jaw tightened. "So what now, Nathan? You want to make things right? You gonna pay back the people you stole from?" My stomach twisted. I had nothing left. The cars, the money, the offshore accounts, all of it was gone. The police had seized most of it after my accident. I was in debt. And yet, I nodded. "Yes." His laugh was bitter. "And how do you plan to do that?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I will." Ryan stood up. He stared at me for a long moment, then ran a hand through his hair. "You're insane, man. But, for some reason, I believe you." Tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," he muttered. "You've got a long way to go." And with that, he walked out. But I knew this was only the beginning. For the first time in my life, I had no money, no power, no control, but I had a purpose. I didn't know how I was going to fix everything. I didn't know how I was going to make things right. But I knew one thing. I would never be the same man again. I had met Jesus. I had seen hell. And now I had to warn others. I had spent my entire life stealing, manipulating, destroying. Now, I would spend whatever time I had left helping, healing, and telling the truth. Because hell is real. Jesus is real. And I was living proof that it is never too late to change. I left the hospital with nothing but the clothes on my back. The world outside felt different, like I had stepped into a place I no longer belonged to. I had spent years living a life of deception. Yet now, for the first time, I felt exposed. There was no mask left to wear, no false identity to hide behind. I had seen hell. I had stood before Jesus. And now I was alive. But for what? Where does a man go when he has spent his entire life stealing, lying, and ruining others? How do you even begin to make things right when the damage you've done is beyond repair? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for certain. I had to try. The first thing I did was return to the people I had hurt. The problem? I had no money left. The bank accounts, the luxury cars, the hidden offshore assets, all of it was gone. The police had frozen what little remained after my accident. I had nothing. And yet, I had to go back and face them. I started with Ryan. He had been my closest friend, my biggest victim. And after the hospital, I realized he had done something no one else would. He listened. When I showed up at his door, he sighed but let me in. "You don't give up, do you?" he muttered, shaking his head. I sat across from him, hands clasped. "Ryan, I meant what I said. I don't know how I'm going to fix what I did, but I will." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. "Then start by telling the truth." It was the hardest thing I had ever done. One by one, I sought out my victims. Some I had personally scammed. Others had lost everything because of my schemes. I told them everything. I told them how I had lied, manipulated them, stolen from them. I told them how I had died, how I had stood in judgment before Jesus. I told them how I had seen the consequences of my sins, how I had felt their pain in ways I could never explain. Some didn't believe me. They laughed in my face, calling me a fraud. Others spat at my feet, telling me I would never be able to undo what I had done. And honestly, they weren't wrong. I couldn't undo it. I couldn't give back years of suffering, couldn't bring back the homes that had been lost, the families that had been torn apart, the dreams that had died because of me. I had spent my whole life believing I was untouchable, but now I understood. Sin leaves a trail of destruction, and once that destruction is done, there's no way to erase it. But I could change, and I could warn others. I started small. I wrote letters, emails, personal apologies to everyone I had scammed. Then, I did something I never thought I would do. I turned myself in. I went to the authorities, admitted to everything, every scam, every fraud, every con. I gave them names, details, evidence. They had already built a case against me after my accident. They had found enough to arrest me. But now, I handed them everything they needed. The judge looked at me with disbelief. "You realize what you're doing, don't you? You're confessing to crimes that no one even knew you committed." I swallowed hard. I know. I was sentenced to prison. I had expected that. I had accepted it. But I hadn't expected what came next. Prison wasn't the worst thing I had ever experienced, because I had already seen hell. I spent my time reading, learning, praying. For the first time, I wasn't chasing money, wasn't running from consequences. I was just living in the truth. And in the truth, I found freedom. Word spread. Inmates, guards, even lawyers started asking me, "Why are you different?" And I told them. I told them about Jesus. I told them about the night I died, the moment I stood before him, the reality of heaven and hell. Some laughed, some ignored me, but some listened. I saw men break down in tears, realizing that they too had caused suffering they could never undo. I saw criminals who had spent their lives hurting others finally understand what they had done. And some of them, they changed, not because of me, but because Jesus reached them the same way he reached me. I spent 3 years in prison, and when I walked out, I wasn't just a free man. I was a new man. Today, I do what I should have done a long time ago. I spend my days helping those I once hurt. I work with victims of fraud, teaching them how to recognize and protect themselves from deception. I work with inmates, former criminals, con artists like me, telling them about the truth I had ignored my whole life. And most importantly, I tell my story because I need people to know. Hell is real. I have seen it. And I know for a fact there are people walking toward it every single day, blind to the destruction they're leaving behind. I was one of them. But Jesus saved me. And now, for as long as I live, I will spend every breath warning others before it's too late. To anyone listening, I need you to hear me. The choices you make matter. The way you treat people matters. The things you do in the dark, the lies you tell yourself to justify your actions, they don't disappear. You may think you're getting away with it. You may think you're untouchable. But one day, you will stand before the truth, and you will see everything. I was given a second chance. You may not get one, but you don't have to wait until it's too late. Jesus is real. Heaven is real. Hell is real. And whether you believe it or not, one day, you will find out. The question is, will it be too late? Believe it or not, one day, you will find out. The question is, will it be too late?